Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of SUGTalks. I'm Craig Dale, your host, and together with our special guests we'll take a deep dive into the topics, challenges and opportunities facing SAP users today. Please make sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. I'm delighted today to be joined by Paul Cooper, UKISUG Chairman and Head of IS at Burton's Biscuits, and Michiel Verhoeven, Managing Director of SAP UK and Ireland. Welcome, gentlemen. And in today's episode, we're going to take a look at some of the key themes that came out of our UKISUG Connect annual conference at the end of November, and also take a look ahead to 2022. So, as we enter a new calendar year, I'd just like to ask you a quick question of what are you looking to get from 2022 from a personal perspective? And if I could start with you, Paul.
Oh, these are always really hard. So I think for me, I still not lost the lockdown extra pounds around the midriff. So I think my New Year's resolution has to be around trying to get back to 5 or 8 points a day on vitality rather than 3 points a day.
Oh, have you been letting those steps go?
I'm still closing my rings every day, Craig. I'm still in front of you on that, but
you will.
Not exceeding. I'm just closing. I'm not exceeding.
Thank you. And Michiel?
Well, I'll go with Paul's theme. I need to get back into my cycling habits. I'm an avid cyclist, and to be very honest, I dropped the ball a little bit in the last 6 months of the second half of 2021. So I'd really like to get my exercise regime back under control. And secondly, I'd love to work a little bit from a vacation place so I can extend my vacation. Working virtually is possible anywhere. So why not take advantage?
That sounds good, isn't it? Working from home, working from a shack on the beach, as long as it's got Wi-Fi, perfect. Thank you very much for that, gentlemen. And now, back to business. It was fantastic from my perspective as well, just to see so many people from across the SAP community in the UK and Ireland attend our recent Connect conference, despite all of the challenges that faced us with Storm Arwen, the new Omicron variant, and so on and so forth. It was just to see everybody back together again. And, we'll dig into some of the main themes shortly. But just as we start, it'd be great to get both of your perspectives on how the event went for you. And if I could start with you, Michiel, on this one, please.
It was my first user group experience in the UK and Ireland, and frankly, I was energized by the level of interaction, the challenges that customer asked about, the sense of reality of where we're at in terms of digital transformation, the need for skills and capabilities, and a general support, I would say, for making change happen together. I was very, very encouraged, and I felt very good being there, and I had many customers that reciprocated that feeling, I would say. So outstanding event, Craig and Paul, and thank you again for inviting us.
I'm more than welcome. Thank you for being there. And Paul?
I think for me, it's always a hard event for me because it goes by in a blur. So there's 52 weeks of build up and then 3 days of non-stop things that I get involved with. But actually sitting in the exhibition hall doing one of the interviews that I had to do and listening to the noise and the interaction of people, having random bump into each other conversations or conversations with partners on their stand and SAP on their stand, was the kind of the real standout moment that emphasizes that point that, interactions on Zoom calls and Teams calls could only go so far, but actually the benefit of an event like that, particularly from a user perspective, is that random conversation that you have with someone that gives you a light bulb moment or sends you off to the stand of a partner selling a particular solution that would actually sort out something you've got. So it was those sorts of things. I think the other thing for me, a couple of people said to me, what would your key takeaway? What was the one topic for you? And actually, I think the beauty of that event is that, whilst Rise and S4 and things like that are important, actually it caters to people who are not doing those things as much as it caters for people that are doing them. And therefore, there's a lot to get out of the event that will be specific to where your organisation is on their journey in digital transformation and all the usual buzzwords that get thrown out in things like this.
Yeah, it's an interesting balance to strike, isn't it? Where we need to be looking to the future and talking about the innovation, transformations, but also we also need to be supporting those customers that still want to sweat their assets for the time being before they go on the journey. And it's a good balance. But I like what you were saying there about the exhibition and that buzz that goes around as well. It's not something you see, it's something you feel, and I think you just can't replicate that in an online environment. And I think you're right there. And you mentioned S4HANA, and if I can just steer us down that path for the moment. And we looked at a number of key measures around S4 and what's happening in the community in the UK and Ireland. And based on our member data, a quarter of organisations are now using S4, and that is a 10% increase on 12 months previously. And so, Michiel, do you see this as an encouraging sign towards user adoption in the UK and Ireland?
Absolutely, Craig, and thank you for doing the survey. And it showed to me in another light that people are mostly looking for the when and the how rather than the why. The why does come up, of course, in terms of real business justifications. So what I have had a number of customers ask me is, Michiel, what is the business case for a new ERP? And I typically think that's the wrong question, because the real question is, how do you improve your supply chain? How do you improve your customer experience? How do you accelerate your finance close and your productivity of your employees? And how do you deal with sustainability issues and reporting and tracking as a result throughout your supply chain? Those are the CEO questions and CFO questions that we need to answer. And so the more you want to justify an ECC upgrade to an S4, the harder it gets, is my view. And flipping that around to the real business problem is what is needed. And so, yes, I see more people acknowledging that. I see people leading their business cases more in the right way. And I think your user data and survey indicated that there's clearly an acceleration happening rather than a fear about how do we do it. It's a when do we do it and how do we do it.
Yeah, thank you. And Paul, any comments?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I think over the last few years we've started to see SAP change the way they use their language on things like this. And you heard Michiel then talking about lines of business. And I think that's become much more important on justifying these sorts of projects and getting the benefits out the other end. And it's that outcome approach. It's very easy in the IT world to slip into the techno babble of why we're doing this upgrade because of, but actually it's harder to talk about what it's going to do to the supply chain when you start that journey. But once you get into that and you realize that that's where your justifications are going to come from, and ultimately you're going to end up with a much more efficient organization, fit for future, and all of those. I'll go back to some buzzwords from earlier on. But that approach of looking at what outcomes, where are the pain points in the organization, and tackling those rather than traditionally, the technical community in even in the members, it's always come from, we'll do the technical upgrade first, rather than that being almost a given that we need to do that to get this and this. So I think that's really powerful change in the way that people are approaching this. I think we've seen a gradual uptake of people on that S4 journey, and we're starting to see that accelerate now. And hopefully, over the next couple of years, we'll see that accelerate even more. That'll enable us to get more people coming to the user group and talking about those journeys and the outcomes that they've had, which will then help those organisations that perhaps are still struggling to get their mind around looking at outcomes and business process improvement, as opposed to moving infrastructure to the cloud and seeing what that does for them. So I think that should be powerful for us.
Yeah, it's an interesting you talk there about that acceleration that we probably believe we're going to see very soon. And just reflecting on something you said earlier as well, Michiel, around skills. And, if we, one of the areas of concern that came out of the survey was around training and skills. And, from that research, a third of organisations rated the level of training provided by their partner during their S4HANA implementation as being poor or very poor, which isn't really great. But of those organisations yet looking to go to S4, 71% were actually concerned about that lack of available skills, and that might slow their migration. So just one thing for you, Michiel, is what's SAP doing around that to address some of those concerns?
Yeah, so within the UK, I think there's about 7,000 professionals employed in the SAP ecosystem that are in some form or shape in customer or partner base, capable, certified, and providing economic value throughout the ecosystem. And people can read our UK economics report that was provided by Oxford Economics. It was a very interesting study, and it gives you a good insight into where those professionals are. Now, is that enough? Is that not enough? So obviously the world is now adjusted to remote delivery, and it's no longer a sales pitch or something you have to really get used to individually. Everybody now knows that remote delivery is the new norm. And therefore your pool is not 7,000 professionals in the UK only. It is much larger than that, and it is a global pool of SAP professionals. So if you're a customer, I would really recommend you think about asking your partners, where do they pull the skills from? So we are all familiar with remote delivery centers in India, but those people also work from home, right? And they don't work in their one building anymore. And that's the same for Colombia or Brazil or for Hungary. People are now all working from home. So number one, do not have the mindset that everybody needs to be a project team on site. It really is a remote delivery function. The second thing is, you asked me, what does SAP do specifically to address the skills gap? And I just want to make an important point, which is about learning.sap.com, which is our new website. It is the home for learning content, and it includes a very, very good learning journeys. So, for example, how do you do an SAP Analytics Cloud? How do you develop extensions? How do you do modeling? How do you do integrations? How do you build applications on top of BTP? I can keep on going, but there's specific learning journeys for this content. There's also, of course, our SAP Open University. There's the SAP community where you can engage with experts. And of course, what everybody in the user community already knows is that we have Learning Hub with solution editions, right? So we have those for students, we have those for partners, and there are learning rooms as well where you can collaborate with peers and experts and do certification. So content and access is not the challenge, right? There's plenty of content. Delivery, my ask is that you as a customer consider that deliberately with your partners. What is remote, what is nearshore, what is on-site, and be open and minded about that. And when it comes to our partners, I have a goal in the UK and in Ireland to have 4 times more certified consultants in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, that I said that 1 year ago, so 2 more years to go. But that is a specific KPI I've set with my team to make sure that we drive that with our partners. And that's a very important one, right? And so I do believe that there is a shortage of talent. So to simply say, let's take people out from customers, out from partners, and first do training, that's probably not the way to go either, Craig. I would say it is a combination of self-paced learning, online learning in classes and on-site on projects, right? It's really a structured approach that we all need to take.
I think you're right, and it's certainly an area that we mentioned during the conference keynotes that we're looking at in, the education offering from the user group. So I think it's vital. It's that ecosystem training you mentioned there, if you like, the plethora of platforms and opportunities for customers to learn. If I can just move to you, Paul, and look, so there seems to be lots out there. So what can organisations do to drive better and more tailored training for what they need?
Yeah, I think I just pick up on one point from Michiel, and I think it's really good that they're emphasising the certification of consultants, because I think in the past, not all, you would look at the CVs of a group of consultants and get them, and you'd get very differing levels of experience and expertise in solutions, which added days to projects, and days mean money when you're on a seat like myself. Going back to your point, Craig, I think the important thing for me is reflecting on what your organisation has as a starting point and where it's trying to get, and do classic sort of needs analysis, or reviewing the skills of people, and where you can within your teams upskill those people. There's a benefit for you as an organisation. They come with good knowledge of how your business or organisation works. It's great for their careers that they're getting, personal development around their key skill sets in SAP, whether that be the technical side of SAP or the using side of SAP. And I reflect back to the keynotes at the conference in November. We heard from the CIO of Britvic, Sudeep, and he was talking about organisations needing to, invest far more in skills and change management during projects, and to actually up that in the agenda on the risk register, at the steerco or wherever is appropriate in your group, to actually say, we aren't going to get the benefits that we laid out in our business case for this project if we do not do the change management and the training of either our technical resources, our application people, and most importantly, those people that are going to make it work post the go live, when the go live parties happened and all the consultants have disappeared into the sunset. So, reflecting on what he said, that was a really powerful part of his keynote at the conference.
Yeah, very good point. And just back to what you were talking there about investing in skills and specifically change management. One of the other elements that came out of the survey was that for those organisations that have moved to S4, a third of them said that actually change management, the change management that was required, was more than what they expected. So what do you feel organisations can do to ensure a smooth transition, Paul?
You've got to take your user population on a journey, and you need to be looking at what frustrates them at the moment. And classically in the SAP world, the screens were not the most user friendly. Grey, light grey, or concrete almost colours, and plethora of fields that you had no idea what they meant and why they were on the screen, because you only had to type a number in that box on the left hand corner, and what was the rest of the screen for. So it's talking to the user community in your organisation about those frustrations, and then taking them on the journey that shows them what they're going to see, how much cleaner the user interface is going to be, how actually in some areas they may no longer need to do some of that transactional processing because you're going to invest in automation, etc., and take out the drudgery of some of those transaction processing activities, and show them what the new world will look like, the benefits to them as individuals alongside of the benefits to the organization. It's always really easy to say, it's going to make us more profitable or more efficient. That's a little bit distant from someone who's sat at a desk processing invoices every day. So how's it going to improve their life that they can see their part in, the outcome for the whole organisation. I think those sorts of things are really important to get your community engaged and keep them engaged after the go live as well. So have power user or key user, forums to get them coming in, sharing their experience of what's gone well in how they're working, pick up some of their frustrations, go back and revisit those transactional areas and so on. So I think there's a whole raft of things, but for me, engaging your using community in your organization is going to be really powerful to get the outcome and success that you want.
Yeah. Michiel?
Yes, I think the change management, as Sudeep from Britvic pointed out, if I'm not mistaken, it was 30% of his budget that he allocates to, right? And I think everybody should take that away as, am I doing that? And if I'm not doing that, how do I substitute for it? Because change is real and it needs to be catered for in your processes and in your project plans. Now, specifically from an SAP perspective, when I look at it from the SAP Center of Excellence that you as a customer may have, please look at the SAP learning journeys, review your learning hub agreements, speak with our SAP training teams directly. Of course, you can speak with our partners, but this is what you can find out directly from SAP, and we're happy to guide you through that. That is part of what we do, and it's a minimum requirement. But the change we're talking about is bigger than that, and that's what Paul was alluding to with the end users. So a couple of things that I would recommend. Number one, when you start your S4 journey, come up fast with a prototype or a pilot where people can touch and feel and see the new system, where they do delta design, where they get familiar with, let's say, an S4 finance situation. Put your financial controllers close to the system, even though it's imperfect, standard out of the box. Let them see the deltas, let them see the problems, and let them engage with it. That is typically the best way to do it, rather than going, let me do blueprinting design for 12 months and do my business process analysis. That is from the 1990s, right? That approach is different. And it encourages earlier change and adoption and more engagement. And the final part I would say is our partners have a very important role to play here, depending on the size of you as a customer and, of course, your budget. This is where the PwCs, Deloittes, EYs, KPMGs, Accentures, NTTs, they shine, right? This is what they're very good at, that change management and business integration. So I would encourage you to think about that as part of your budgets.
Interesting. And how is SAP helping customers? I assume from what you were saying there about those, prototyping, etc. SAP is there to help and support customers in that?
No, absolutely. We have multiple partners that we do that together with. PwC is one of them. They call it Show Home, and they provide a setup for the finance organization, and they do exactly that. So what does the life as a financial controller look like going forward? Deloitte is doing something similar with their kinetic methodology. Accenture has a boost methodology for our RISE program, just to get you to engage faster with the system. And I think this is what people need to take advantage of and not get stuck into the lengthy design discussions only, but just see what's there. And of course, Craig, our hyperscaler friends, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon, they're very keen to help spin up those environments. And I have one customer where I asked them, so let us show you in your environment with your production data in 1 week time what that would look like. And we did it with production data in 1 week, and people were blown away that that was possible. We were not trying to showcase that we could run their company. We were trying to showcase what comes out of the box and what's missing so we can design for the delta. And that really, really energized the customer, saying, okay, I'm clearer what my end state will look like.
Well, I'd add to that even something as simple as the S4 simulation game. Having kind of done that a couple of times with groups, and including the board in the organisation I work for full time, they were blown away. Particularly as they were the two groups I've done it with are people that were not necessarily full-time users, and so had got the impression from many years ago when they did use it a little bit more, and all of a sudden seeing that the difference in user interface and the way that it works, and the things that you were just talking about, it suddenly has more life than it being another IT project that we've just got to do because we've got to do it.
Yeah, lovely. And just reflecting back a little, you obviously brought Rise into the conversation, Michiel, and we've covered Rise in detail in a previous podcast episode, but it was certainly a big conversation at Connect. And Michiel, what's been the reaction to Rise from customers in the UK and Ireland?
I would say overarchingly positive. I thought it was interesting some of the feedback that came from the journalists after the user conference. I liked the challenges that were posed. I think they're fair in terms of simplicity of messaging. So number one, my message is typically about accountability, as for when you want it, and the transformation as a subscription, right? It's really important to start with the business process modeling capability inside the system and not on your Visio or PowerPoint tools. So that message, I think, has landed with a lot of people. And number two, I think the reaction is, well, is it relevant for me because I'm a customer that's already making my business case for S4HANA? I'm prepared to go, should I do it or not? And there's other people who said, look, I'm not even ready. Like you said in the start of the call today, Craig, there are customers who simply want to maximize for the next 2-3 years what they have today, and we need to live with that because they don't have the resources or the budgets or the management support yet to go to the S4 journey. So different reactions, but overall, I see a lot of appetite to learn and get up to speed.
Yeah, there was certainly that, to fully understand what it means. It was great having, Vincent from Inchcape talking about their journey and sharing their view of their journey to Rise to help customers in that way as well. That was really good to have at the event. And Paul, from a user perspective, what would you like to see coming more from Rise with SAP?
I think firstly, I'd say, with my user group hat on, it's the job of us as a user group to help those of us that are members to go into these sorts of programs and so on with their eyes open. So, for us, it's about equipping our members to ask the right questions of SAP and the SIs and so on. And also providing opportunities for them to see what other members have done. We started that journey with, as you said, Inchcape talking at the conference. So I think, that side of it, we understand and we're starting to do and have done a number of events over the last year. I think with my user hat on, it's like all these things, the devil is in the detail. And I think what I've found over the last year since the announcement is there's much more to it than it first appeared. It's a much bigger product. Product is probably not the right word, but it's much bigger and much more, there are different tracks that you can go down with Rise. So, it's more of an umbrella than a product, I think. And the different routes that people could take and what is appropriate for organizations means it sometimes is harder to understand than someone coming to you and saying, here's a product that you can do expenses with, you can use it on a mobile phone and so on. That's quite easy to get your head around. When you get into these sorts of things, it takes time for it to percolate through the brain cells, but also to start to reflect what that could give your organization and how that could benefit. So I think from my perspective, I'd like to see SAP, more talking about those user journeys that have happened, the outcomes those organizations have had, and we'll present some of those opportunities through the user group. But also, and that, I've mentioned this more than once, we want to see SAP continue their marketing heft behind Rise, and it not to be something that was the 2021 announcement. We need to see that being sustained through 2022 as people start to understand what it means and reflect how they could use that in their organisation.
Yeah, it's quite an important point there, isn't it? Because obviously, SAP certainly innovates at a much more rapid rate than what customers are able to consume that innovation, and it's kind of just waiting for customers to catch up. We certainly have the early adopters, and bringing those early adopters in to speak to the rest of the community is going to be very important, and bringing the rest of the community along on that journey too. So I think that is quite a big part. And while we're talking about customers and engagement, and customer trust and building a trust and relationship, especially between SAP and customers, has been a big focus area for both the UKISUG Group and SAP. And it would be great if you could just tell us a little bit more about the joint trust workshops that we've had taken place, Paul.
Yeah, so this is an initiative that we actually kicked off in the pre-COVID era. And we had some workshops at Clockhouse Place. Really good engagement from input from customers and from a broad spectrum of people within SAP, from both consulting and services backgrounds and account management and finance and so on. So it's really good and to actually spend time in the room with the SAP people from a customer perspective, understand some of the boundaries with which they work within SAP, but then talk about kind of the counter side to that as to why sometimes procurement processes in an organization might not be quite as straightforward as the pre-sales person had told the salesperson it was going to be. And it's a really good way that we've been exchanging what works well for a customer in terms of what they see from their account management and the team behind those people at SAP, and how sometimes the SAP people get frustrated with the customer and vice versa, and exchanging those in a safe way during design thinking workshops that have been really well facilitated to kind of get us through lots of, because it's really easy to throw loads of things on the table from both sides, but then actually to work together to think, how can we overcome this? What sort of cadence would be appropriate at different points in people's, SAP life cycle, whether it, that additional input and requirements that might be needed during, a project phase versus, a normal operations. And I quite liked what Michiel talked about at the conference of get your account manager in your steering group when you're doing these big RISE or S4 type projects. So it's been a really good opportunity to interplay on that. We've had good engagement on both sides, and I think we've had a few issues a number of years ago around licensing and things like that. And I think what's come out of the trust piece is a more mutual understanding of the different pressures that both sides are under, and how can we work together ultimately for the success of the customer. Because if customers aren't successful and aren't getting what they need from their SAP solutions, ultimately SAP will not be successful.
Yeah, very true. And Michiel, any comments from your side on those workshops?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it goes back to the importance of having trust between customers and SAP, and the transparency of where problems are and what we're actually doing about them, and on both sides, right? I really think this is a very good initiative, and I hope many people learn more about it. But let me give you a couple of examples, right? So some problems that customers typically tell us is, look, we're very, very siloed. You need to be simpler to engage with, single point of contact. Now, we have set up a customer success board. We are investing more and more in customer success principles, and you'll see that particularly in 2022. We don't have enough of those probably. That will be the next feedback, but it is a step in the right direction. The second is the KPIs for sales. So they have changed, as I also highlighted at the conference. That is more on recurring revenue and not just on new bookings. Of course, we still want to grow as a company. Salespeople need to sell. That's just the nature of who they are. But they are measured also on NPS scores. And of course, there is no renewal revenue unless you as a customer have engaged over a continuous period and not just 1 year period. So this is very good. Another complex topic is licensing. We keep getting feedback on that. Now there is something called me.sap.com. I hope everybody takes advantage of that. That's SAP for me. You can see where your licensing entitlements are. And if you've structured your agreements with us in such a way, you can actually start purchasing that way. So we had a customer just last week. I personally worked on them to restructure 30 plus different contracts, believe it or not, 30 plus contracts into one overall framework with 3 schedules. And as a result of then that simplification, they are now able to buy through our digital store. So they were delighted that they didn't have to engage on all this complexity anymore. So I encourage you to really, really take advantage of that. Then there was, of course, things about contacts, invoicing, incident management. All that comes together in SAP for me. So I encourage, if you don't know SAP for me, that's the one thing I'd say, please take a look at it, embrace it, talk with your account manager or your partner about it, your entitlements, your contacts, your invoicing, it's all there. And this is our big focus on the digital space. And I think you'll be pleased with that. There is much more to be done, right? Other feedback that you have as customers on us relates to governance, communications, meetings. How do we do this simpler? You probably get bombarded with marketing emails. There's 25 events you can attend. Which ones should you attend? Which ones should you not? The answer is always the user group conference, of course. And the other answer is always Sapphire. And then everything in between is probably industry related or topic related. So there's a lot that's happening, Craig. But the final point I'd make is we have put together our transformation program for SAP in the UK and Ireland, and we share that transparently with you in a public forum, what our 4 pillars are on customer success, partner success, industry leadership, and the one SAP team. And we absolutely want your feedback to us, because the only way to change that image and that collaboration and trust is through tangible progress that you can objectively give us feedback on. So a lot happening, and I'm really delighted that we do this together.
Yeah, and the SAP for me piece is a good example in those trust workshops where the people in Germany that are working on the product, came to that group in the sessions we had in, I think it was September and October, to demonstrate where the product was going, take feedback from people that had been using it, try and understand why some people weren't using it. So, that was a really good example of something that we talked about was coming when we did the original workshops before COVID, and we were able to pick up and see the journey, but also then, put some influence into where that product will go over the next year. And there's quite a lot of change coming to that product, as you would expect with SAP. But it's a great starting point. Again, there's some things incumbent on us as customers to keep our data in there up to date on who are the right contacts from a technical perspective, from a CCOE perspective, etc. But that's part of the trust thing. We've got to commit as customers to do things as well as SAP have got to commit to do things.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, and quite a lot of the challenges that were brought up from customers at those workshops are kind of answered in a way through SAP for me. And as you said there, Paul, quite important that it is, I suppose, in my mind, a living system. Use it and feedback on it so it can be improved and it can grow in the future and deliver more for customers and help as being that one-stop shop for everything a customer needs to understand, what they're using, perhaps what they're not using, and then how they grow and buy new in the future, as you said, Michiel. And as we're moving on and talking about that, you also mentioned the transformation in SAP in UK and Ireland, Michiel, and we have a webinar coming up from your teams in the next month or so, and so please everybody engage with that and understand how SAP is transforming and what it means for you, and hopefully for the betterment of your relationships going into the future. And looking forward to 2022, what are SAP's big focuses in the UK and Ireland? Okay.
Yeah, so continuation of what I outlined, right? Paul said it, don't change every year just because you have a new marketing idea or with a new name. So we're continuing the same thing. We are continuing with our customer success mantra, which means let's get a customer success plan for all customers that want that we can engage with directly. And let's teach our partners what that looks like as well. The second thing it means in industry leadership, it means for us, we are growing our cloud significantly. Our cloud revenues are what Wall Street is looking at. It's what all of you are looking at in terms of improving our performance in service delivery, in support capabilities. So it's really important we come with strong education on why the journey to the cloud is possible, valuable, what challenge it comes with, what change it comes with, and be industry leaders in that space. And I think there's a lot of goodness to bring there. So there's a continuation of that. The third, with our partners, we talked about it today. Really, I need to see 4 times more certifications by the year 2023. That's what I've asked the partners. That's what I've asked my team. That's what we're KPIing people on. It's very important. And yes, I'm also looking to expand in the partner success area in the indirect channel. We have seen a consolidation of players. So large SIs have bought smaller SAP shops. While that may be good for some, it is not what all our customers necessarily embrace. So it's very important we look at our channel and say, do we need to recruit new partners and that are perhaps smaller, that we help them grow and connect customers with those specialized partners? And that's particularly true for small, medium enterprise. And then the fourth element is on the SAP team. We continue. This is the same mantra as last year. That trust that you described between users is also important for us inside SAP, that people feel empowered and accountable at the same time, and not just talk about what jacket they wear, what role description they have, but really step up and lead and truly become a place where people want to belong to. So that's my 4 priorities: customer success, partner success, industry leadership, one SAP team. And we continue that until 2023 is over, and then we may do it again.
Thank you very much. And Paul, what's the user group's big focuses for the coming year?
I think for us, the key thing is going to be executing on the strategy that we've developed over the last year. So for those of you that weren't at the conference, and firstly, why weren't you there? But for those of you that weren't there, we talked about the work that we've done over the last year on the strategy for the user group, supported by surveying our members, partners, SAP, and the whole community, and that has given us good feedback that we were doing the right things for the organisation and for you as members, but there's still more we can do and can develop. So that's been a really big focus this year, and we've spent a lot of time on that as a board, and Craig and your team have probably spent hours and hours on that, and the next year is about executing what we've learned from that. And as a user group, we've started off on that journey. There's been a reorganisation, come re-emphasis of roles within the team up in Teesside, with a focus around the word community for us and success. And so we started looking at where we are with our people in terms of our full-time employees, and how that reads across to how they support our volunteer SIG chair community, and how we grow our member base, but also ensure that once someone's a member, they have a successful journey with us as a user group, and they get the benefits of membership. And and that comes from our beliefs and behaviours, further development of that community, and how we speak as an organisation to our our ecosystem, for want of a better phrase. And I think it's probably just worth at this point emphasising, we did a lot of things around purpose and vision to support how we develop the strategy over the next year. And this isn't something that came out of the blue. This is regularly something that we look at as a user group from a board to ensure that we are meeting the needs of the membership and seeing what's going on in the wider ecosystem to make sure we're not getting left behind. But I think, just to emphasize that purpose, our purpose is to create one SAP community, learning and developing together, speaking with one voice. And that will be at the heart of what we do next year.
Thank you very much. And just in closing now, as we come to the end of our discussion, just one question open to the both of you is, how are SAP and UKISUG going to be working together over the next 12 months?
So Craig, if I can start, I would say I will continue my personal engagement with all of you on a monthly basis, invest my hours. I think this is extremely valuable, and I appreciate the time you make for me personally. But as a result, it puts pressure on my leadership team, puts pressure on the people inside SAP to really engage and not just talk, right? And that is engagement through actions and outcomes. So I welcome that continuation on education session, on user groups, but I also think there's some good sessions possible with our partners that I'd like you to take advantage of if you can, to give them a bit of a space to showcase what is their value add to you as a user community. And I would welcome you putting a bit of pressure on them as well to showcase something valuable, and while driving the certifications with me, so that we collectively have more skills in the ecosystem.
Yeah, certainly. And Paul?
Yeah, I think for me, that reinvigoration that the conference helped to really emphasize is very important. I think that the work we've done on the trust workshops is sustaining that and starting to see the benefits of that, starting to get the feedback from our members on the behavioural changes of the account managers, and maybe a little bit the other way in terms of what we can do to support our members in understanding how they can work better with SAP. Education will be a big thing, and that whole skills piece that we talked about earlier on. And one of the things that we talked about, Craig, while we were at the conference, was helping the members understand what the right certifications are when people are working and they're talking about particular projects, and how we can work together with SAP. Probably SAP education in this case to help people understand that at this point in a project or pre a project or once you go into business as usual, this is what you should be looking at from the consultants or the contractors, etc., that you're using on your programs. So I think those sorts of things will be absolutely key, and maintaining engagement like this with Michiel and the wider team over the next year is beneficial to both of us.
Okay, well, gentlemen, thank you very much. Paul, Michiel, thank you very much for your time and insights and spending the time with me recording this. And just in closing, change management was mentioned as a key area early on in our discussion. And please do go and look at the Cost of Change white paper recently published by UKISUG, where you can really look and drill into how to manage change and what to look out for, as there are quite a lot of hidden change elements and costs of change that that may not be apparent immediately. So do take a look at that, and hopefully that will help you on your journey. And thank you very much for listening. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and found it valuable. And until the next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands.